our viewers, Corker and Cardin, Democrats, successfully passed a compromise bill giving congressional oversight. Senator Cardin said we don't trust Iran. Senator Corker said he believes that the Obama administration has given up too much, although he hasn't seen the final details. Do you agree with that assessment?
When we look at the Iran situation, first I worked with Bob Corker on a lot of issues when I was on the Foreign Relations Committee, and particularly during the Arab Spring when the administration was going into Libya without coming to the Congress. There are three things we need to look at with respect to the Iran deal. The first is, I do not believe that you can have a legally binding international commitment without the full consent of the Congress, not the oversight that they are offering in this bill. Although I would say I think he's made quite an accomplishment by getting this bill through the committee in the form.
You believe it needs approval as if it were a treaty?
Specific approval, and I said this when the Bush administration was putting together the strategic framework agreement in Iraq in 2008. I said it when President Obama said he was going to have a binding legal arrangement with respect to climate change. You cannot do that without the specific consent of the Congress. Well, and secondly, with respect to Iran itself, we need to look at this region. As you know, there are three major power centers in the region: Israel, Saudi Arabia, and Iran. And since our invasion of Iraq, Iran has gained a much stronger foothold in terms of that balance of power. So we don't want to be sending signals into this region that we are acquiescing to the situation where Iran might become more dominant. Right. And thirdly, as they said over and over again in your interview, we don't know what is in this, the particulars. So it's vitally important that the Congress come forward and examine this agreement in detail and get a vote.
To be fair, we don't know the final details, but we know a fair amount about this agreement. We know in the most basic terms that all the nuclear sites are going to remain. They're going to be modifications, fewer centrifuges. The military site, the secret military site, will no longer be spinning uranium, but it will keep those centrifuges. These, if we look back a couple of years, are pretty significant concessions on the part of the Obama administration. When you look at the basic outline of this agreement, is it a good deal?
Well, again, we know our interpretation of the outline of the agreement.
Well, that's another problem,
that Iran has given its interpretation, which is another reason why we need to really scrub this whole idea. And the other thing that I keep coming back to is that when we go back to the time that I was in the Pentagon in the 1980s, and we were talking about the SALT agreements and the reduction of nuclear arms with the Soviet Union, both sides had nuclear weapons. And we were talking about a reduction, and the end result of this could well be our acquiescence in allowing Iran to develop a nuclear weapon. We don't want that. I don't think the Iranians really want that, because if they look in this region, they're going to see that you're going to have proliferation. But we need to really be on top of this, and I think the piece that Secretary Kissinger and George Shultz wrote in the Wall Street Journal summed it up about as well as it could be summed up.
They criticized the agreement. They said that it was too much of a concession. Who's right? Are Shultz and Kissinger right, or is the Obama administration right?
Well, and on the side of the Obama administration, Bill Burns, who former Deputy Secretary of State, is one of the great diplomats. He wrote a very fine piece on the other side. The questions that Kissinger and Shultz raised about verification and what was on the other side are really important. That's why the Congress needs to scrub this and give specific approval. And I'm saying as someone who potentially could be obviously in the executive branch, but I think it's healthy for the country.